All right, here we go, Vincent. Okay, guys, I'm here with a good buddy of mine, Mr. Vincent Laforet. You may have heard his name once or twice over the years. If you haven't, I'm going to introduce you to him. So Vincent is a pioneer. Well, first of all, first and foremost, he's a filmmaker, right? So he's got a passion for the moving image, and he's a pioneer in terms of he's one of the first people out there that introduced the world to the possibilities of shooting high-end cinematic-looking video or capturing that kind of footage using regular off-the-shelf, off-the-rack DSLR. So we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about cinematography, all that cool stuff, and we're going to talk about 4K a little bit. And is it important? Should people care about it? All these camera companies seem to be throwing it around. Should photographers care about 4K? Vincent Laforet, welcome to the show.
Hey, Frederick, thank you.
It's always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. I feel like we were just talking, in Vegas, or where was that? Was it Vegas? It was Vegas, right?
It was Vegas, but I vaguely, it all melds into one, to be very honest.
It was a blur. It was a blur. Cool, man. So let's just jump right into it. I know you're a busy guy and got a lot of stuff to do. So thank you, first of all, for taking the time to do this.
My pleasure, thank you.
But I want to, before we kick it off, I want to talk about the workshops that you're running. And we talked about them a little bit in Vegas when we did the interview there, but not a whole lot. And since then, the workshops have kicked off, and you're like rock starring it around the country, etc. How's that going? And who specifically did you create this workshop series for?
Well, to be perfectly honest, I created it for myself. I had a broken arm for 2 months, and I didn't know what to do with myself. And I said, well, this is a great opportunity to watch my 115 or so favorite films and actually break them down. I'll never have this kind of time ever again. And as I was doing it, I was learning so much from rewatching films I've already seen 3, 4, 5, 10 times, because instead of watching them, I was actually dissecting them and taking copious notes on coverage, on camera movement, and on sequencing. And I said, you know what, this would make for a really interesting workshop. So just by doing that myself, I know I benefited tremendously as a director, as a filmmaker, as a DP. And now we're halfway through a 32-city tour across 10 weeks across the entire United States.
That's
This is
awesome.
my one day off, and I'm here with my kids. And I have several strategic times where I have some time off in between to stay sane. But we've been having a blast. It's been surprisingly fun. I was very afraid of repeating the same thing 32 times. It's 9 hours of content. It's a lot of stuff. But the reaction has been super positive. We have people from Industrial Light and Magic and Pixar and Apple and Adobe and a lot of professional directors and DPs coming to this, as well as people who are starting off. And what's made me very happy is that people from all levels seem to be getting a lot out of this, which is the ultimate goal for me as a teacher.
Now, is from a student standpoint, if I take the course or the workshop, is the idea that I will get a deeper understanding of how these films were put together and what was in that filmmaker's head when he, put the camera in a certain position or lit a certain scene a certain way? Are you deconstructing scenes at that level?
I am, but I'm limiting it to motion. So the idea is we're not going to talk about lighting. We're not going to talk about working with actors or financing your film. This is about one of the most basic things in motion, obviously, is moving the camera, how, when, and why to move it, and more importantly also how to move stuff in front of it, actors, extras, whatever it is, so that you keep your frame alive. And we're studying films from all the way back to Citizen Kane, to a lot of Spielberg and Scorsese, and the idea is whether or not you're just starting or pretty advanced, you all generally tend to gain something from this, because the way you move the camera is one of the most influential things you can do as a filmmaker in terms of directing a scene, both in terms of where you put the camera, how you sequence it, the type of coverage that you execute, moving masters, one-shot wonders, coverage principles. These are things that apply to anybody, whether you're shooting with your iPhone all the way up to a full steady camera movie. And the beauty of this, is the reason I constructed this, is if you do lighting or actors, that's pretty specific to narrative. Whereas this is something that everyone does, whether they're doing documentaries or weddings or shorts, corporate videos, all the way up to the big features, because it's a universal language that we share. And there aren't that many moves. There's 8 basic moves that we talk about in terms of cinema language, 2D moves and 3D moves, and then there are combination moves like zollies and parallax moves, etc., and then coverage principles, and then how to make great one-shot wonders. We go and we examine the best one-shot wonders from Goodfellas and from Children of Men and many other series, like even True Detective. But you hear the operators actually talk to you about how they did it. We do diagrams to break down their movement and how it's motivated by the actors. I teach people to think about the camera as a piece of metal, and all the actors are magnets that keep it moving throughout the scene. And people come out with a much deeper understanding of what it is that you do as a director and filmmaker, no matter what they do. And even someone who's never shot a film will come out with something pretty valuable in this. They'll have a totally new appreciation for what directors do.
That's really cool. That's really cool.
Yeah.
One of the things that I know, myself included, when with people that aren't sort of immersed in the world of video, when we start looking at all that goes into it, it's easy to say, oh yeah, I could take my iPhone and do video, but when you start looking at what it takes to put a scene together in one of these big budget movies, or even a medium or small budget movie, it starts becoming clear that, wow, okay, it's not just my 5D anymore. There's a little bit more that needs to go into it.
Right.
What advice do you give the photographers that are saying, you know what, I'm really interested in moving into motion and maybe making a small film or a short film?
At the risk of... Yeah, I know exactly what you're asking, so I heard to cut you off. But at the risk of selling this workshop, that's why I did this specific workshop, because how you choose to move the camera, and more importantly, the people in front of it, will have more of an effect on what your film looks like than any piece of gear that you buy. You can buy the most fancy gear in the world, have entire teams at your disposal, and not really know how to maximize their use and how to put them to work. And one of the things I point out to people is that one of the lost arts is it's blocking, where you actually move actors in front of your camera. The camera itself never moves. If you watch a film like Fargo, the camera doesn't move that much. If you watch films like The Sting, and what they're studying is how to move actors in front of them, from the camera, and use some coverage principles to keep it very dynamic. And we teach you that. We say, if you don't have all this fancy gear, here's some stuff you can do that's pretty important, that will give your indie film that Hollywood look. And it's not necessarily that expensive. So I'm really trying to pull people back away from this obsession with gear, not to focus on lighting for now, not to focus on sound design or color grading or 4K or frame rates. Say all those are important and they're additive. But if you don't really understand how to shoot a scene and how to cover a scene, not to mention how to move the camera, you're not going to be able to make something that's watchable with the other stuff. You might be able to make it glossy, but this is at the heart of what any director does. And that's why we've chosen to focus on it, and why I can talk about it for 9 hours, in an 11-hour period, and not run out of things to talk about. We start off very basic, between pans and tilts. Little things like if you pan from left to right, it's more comfortable with the audience than right to left. You would think it's a 50-50 split, but it's not. It's based on the way we read. And it's verified in many books and cinema language and screen direction, as well as by script supervisors who've noticed this by taking notes. I had a script supervisor say, I realized this when I was taking notes on sets. Every time they would pan from right to left, it didn't feel as good as left to right. So simple stuff like that, all the way down to, leading and following an actor and the psychology of that. We talk a lot about psychology and intent and how you use these moves and when you use these moves. We look at shots from American Beauty. We look at shots from The Shining, from Full Metal Jacket, you name it, lots of Spielberg. And people come away, I tell them when we start, I'm going to ruin television and film for you. You'll never see it the same way again. And this is I put like a warning symbol, and it's relatively accurate. It opens your mind up to what's being done, which is an entire layer, sometimes subtle, sometimes not, of motion that accentuates, what a Spielberg film looks like, if you will, or feels like to the audience. A lot of that has to do with how the director chooses to move the camera.
Yeah. See, it's little things like that, like I said, it's not just pointing the camera that a lot of still photographers would think, right? Because we're used to thinking in one frame at a time, not to mention sound design and all that, not so much little things like left to right versus right to left. So it seems like when you talk about it, it seems like, oh man, as a still photographer, I'm back at square one now. I got to figure all this stuff out. Is it that much of a leap to get good at this motion stuff?
It is, but this motion layer, they're all layers, right? The lighting's a layer, the acting's a layer. This is the foundational layer. It's one of the thickest ones. And the funny thing is, I really think, people have told me they've come to this course and they've gone to film school and they've learned more in this one day than they have in several semesters or years in film school. Kind of condensed. I've had quite a few, over a dozen people say that.
That's crazy.
And the reality is, once you study this, it kind of unlocks a part of your brain now you're paying attention to it every time you watch TV or a commercial or a web video, and you study now what directors are doing, and I teach you how to do that, so that this will make a significant difference in what you shoot.
That's
You're
cool.
no
And you
longer
learn to,
those random slider moves left to right just because you can. You know,
yeah.
that's the death of any video.
I was gonna say, and you'll learn to appreciate movies more, or like you said, you'll just be ruined for life. Right?
You'll be ruined for life. Yeah,
You'll
that's
be ruined for
true.
life. Well, Vincent, I mentioned in the beginning that you were a pioneer with the, kind of showing people with your Reverie film that how DSLR video can be used to create some pretty amazing and stunning cinematic type video in pieces. Looking back to where things were when you created that film to now and where the tools are now, and we touched on this in Vegas when we talked a little bit. What's your feeling? What's your feeling about, has the industry matured to where you thought it would mature, or has it gone off the rails?
That's a good question. I don't know about maturing. I think the industry is already very mature. I think the DSLR industry has matured. So you have a lot of filmmakers that were not able to play with the big boys because they didn't have access to the cameras or the lights or anything like that. Sorry, my son's distracting me. What are you doing, Noah? All right. This is I've got to give it my 5 minutes when I'm home. Exactly. But it has matured in many ways. I've seen a tremendous amount of talent come out. People like Ryan Booth or the Variable guys or Joey L. A lot of really good stuff coming out of people who wouldn't have been doing this 5, 6 years ago. At the same time, the industry is a little crazed because camera prices keep dropping. It's harder to make money or pay those off. But I think you're going to see a flight back to quality in the next 3 to 5 years, where people are going to stop being enamored with just a video shot with X camera, and they're going to start to say, well, these are the directors and the filmmakers that are consistently able to tell a story correctly. And I'm hoping the pendulum swings back a little bit. But regardless, I'm happy because I know where I was 6 years ago, and I know where I am now, and I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot more about working with actors, about constructing a film, about working with crews and maximizing. If you look at Reverie 6 years ago and you look at the latest thing I did on Nike with Kobe Bryant, there's a big difference in there. And I know what I've learned on my end is 10 times what you see on screen. So I think other people are learning as well. And really one of the big reasons for this workshop was to kind of share what I've learned over 6 or 7 years in as constructive way possible. I've never put 3 months of prep into any education thing. When else are you going to find me on a couch with a broken arm? So the amount of preparation that went into this, I cut 150 films down to 650 examples, and those got called down to the best 150 for this show. So there's some good stuff there. That's what I like about this workshop is even if you think you know all this stuff, which you probably don't, but you might, people who are creative directors at ILM are coming, who've been in 27 years in the business and saying they're having a blast. So that to me is the best thing I can hear, as well as someone saying, I just bought a 5D or GH4, whatever it was, yesterday, and having come here, I'm finally starting to understand a little bit more about what I need to focus on and learn. And that's the goal.
Love it, love it. Well, you mentioned the GH4, and that's a perfect segue into this 4K discussion I wanted to have with you.
Yep.
It's the buzzword, right? Over the last couple of months, Sony with their camera A7, Panasonic with the GH4, which shoots 4K, and another release from Panasonic just yesterday, a consumer level camera with a fixed lens that shoots 4K now. It's like 4K everywhere,
Yep.
What does this mean to us? What does this mean to the still photographer, and what does it mean to folks that are on your level shooting video and motion?
I think the reality is that for 95 to 99% of the people, it's utterly useless. In that they're just going to have too much data to deal with, their hard drives are going to fill up, their computers are going to die with the processing that has to happen for 4K. I like 4K on my end when I shoot a Nike commercial and I have to be able to reposition a shoe, because I only get 45 minutes per athlete, and if they don't strike the shoe exactly, I can reposition it in 4K in post. Whereas if it's 2K or 1080, I don't have that much leeway. Right. So I like having that tool. We often do post moves, on video for episodic television or commercials. But the average person, I would be like, are you sure you really want to deal with that headache? The Sony A7S is a phenomenal image quality. When I saw it at NAB, my jaw dropped.
Yeah.
However, I don't think it does very well in terms of movement necessarily because it's such a large sensor that it has to scan up and down. So I haven't tested it. That's kind of what I've been hearing for the cracks.
Hmm.
And the GH4 may be a little noisy in terms of the sensor because it's such a big sensor. And my
Hmm.
question would be, those two sensors at 2K would probably be, along with the Canon C series and the 5D Mark III series and 1D, all that, the best sensors in the world at 2K, yet we're pushing them to 4K because bigger is better, right?
Right.
More
Right.
resolution on your TV's got to be better, right? Or hertz, and it's not.
Right.
So mainly, we can all argue until we're blue in the face on 4K and its merits. There's nothing wrong with it. It's beautiful. But until I start getting it on my DVR or on Netflix or on my Blu-rays, it's non-existent to me. I like it as a
When's that happening though? When like look into your crystal ball. When
we
will
don't
we
even
start seeing it mainstream?
we don't even have 1080 yet. We have 1080i. Don't have
Yeah.
1080p.
Right.
And I think at least a year, maybe 3 or 5. Probably
Wow.
3, but at
Yeah.
least a year, probably 2. I mean, the World Cup's being shot in 4K. I can't watch it anywhere at 4K, so what's the point? You
It's
know?
falling on deaf eyes, right?
Yeah. So I would tell people, and I find it even myself ironic that a guy like me, who is known because of the 5D Mark II and the Movi and technology, is the person who's harping away saying it's all about craft.
Yeah.
Study the craft of filmmaking, and then studying the resolutions, etc., won't be nearly as important to you because you'll understand that it's such a small part of the equation. It's almost secondary. It's a marketing thing. Hey, my film shot in 4K, come see it. But if the film sucks because you don't know how to move the camera or work with actors, maybe you put your money and your time on the wrong thing. I don't know. I know that I like watching films regardless of what they're shot at. If it's got a good story and it's well told, that's hard enough to do.
Love it. Love it. Well, Vincent, tell you. So the workshop itself, I'll close it off on that. Where are you next? Right, we're recording this. It is what, the 12th of June, and you said you're only halfway through. What are your next couple of cities?
Well, this weekend, the 14th and 15th, we're going to be in Irvine and then LAX at the Renaissance consecutively.
Hmm.
And then next Tuesday, we're in San Diego. Then we go to Phoenix. We go all over Texas, Austin, Dallas, Houston, New Orleans, Fort Lauderdale, Charlotte, Atlanta.
Jeez.
I'm sure there's somewhere else, DC, New York, Brooklyn, and then we're good.
Oh, and then you're done finally.
Well, yeah, I can do the first part, which was, let's see, Philly, Newark, Boston, Columbus, Chicago, Indy, St. Louis, Minneapolis, Salt Lake City, Vancouver, Seattle, Portland, Sacramento, San Francisco, and San Jose.
Wow,
Yeah, and
that's
I can just do
insane.
that without even trying because I've lived it.
That's insane. That is insane. So I only heard one international city in there, Vancouver. What's
Yeah.
any plans to go overseas?
Well, we want to, and I'd love to go to Australia and Europe, and I've been asked in South Africa as well.
Hmm.
I think there'll be some form of this. The only problem right now is we do spend at least half of our time actually shooting. So we have a JL Fisher dolly up there. We've got a Movi M5. We've got a Steadicam. We've got an entire set with 2 actors and lights. We're
Wow.
shooting real productions in front of the students. We're doing 2 scenes from Schindler's List. We're shooting episodic style television with 2 cops coming in through the doors, like a TV show. So it's very much participatory. And to bring that overseas with carnets and customs, and
Yeah.
that's the part that we haven't figured out. This will travel in some way or form or shape, but maybe not with all those bells and whistles. We also have a monitor at every table. Like we have like 50 monitors from Marshall, so that
Gee.
there's like 2 to 3 people per 20-inch monitor, so they can see everything right in front of them,
Oh
with
my
along
God.
with a projector.
This isn't just Vincent in a room full
No,
of
far
people
from
and
it.
a projector looking at
No,
films. You're making productions. Like I
we're
had no
we're
idea it was that deep.
we're traveling with a cube truck. There's 6 people on the staff traveling with me. Come on here. It's Eliana's premiere. Here we go.
Hey, look at that.
There,
The star.
there's 6 people traveling with us, and we have an entire cube truck with quite a high figure amount of equipment with us.
Wow.
It's a
Wow.
real production. They take some 5 hours to set up every location.
All right. The million dollar word is where can people go to sign up for this thing?
Go to directingmotion.com.
Directingmotion.com and do it now,
Yeah.
right? And you're gonna, I won't put you on the spot now, but you're gonna give us a discount for the TWiP audience that we'll
I
put.
will give you a discount. We'll figure that out. I don't know how you're going to do it. We talked about it. It's a done
Yes.
deal.
Yes.
And people should sign up because we just closed LA today. We closed New York today.
Wow.
And Brooklyn's almost sold out. Fort Lauderdale's almost sold out.
Oh,
It's doing really well. So if you're thinking about it, don't think too long. I'd love to have you there because people are flying in from other cities now. So we're having people flying from across the country because they missed it or they got sold out. Someone flew in from India, 7,200 miles. Someone from Australia and London. So people are
wow.
having a good time. It's been a good response.
Hey, Vincent, after this thing is over, you're gonna have to break another limb. What
No,
next
no, no.
year?
I'll do something else. There's less painful ways of doing this.
Yeah. So yeah, you figured it out. Cool.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, thanks a lot. I appreciate you taking time away from the family and in between tour stops to sit down and chat with us. It's been amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, Frederick. Cheers.
All right, man. Take care.
Say bye, Lala. Say bye.
Bye.
Okay.
Brilliant.